Now, I want to talk about a special feature of configuration properties when using Spring Cloud Config. Now, if you notice here, highlighting this is a very special type of component, which again is a configuration properties. But in this same client project, I actually created a service endpoint, which is, again, a REST controller, but specifically, I want to point out that I do not have refresh scope enabled for the annotation. Now, in another section, another lecture, I will talk about refresh scope, but right now I want to talk about a special feature that, as you see in this, that our configuration properties has for being able to refresh. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to run the server. Now I've already started it up, this client, and let's go look at first the configuration file that we will be pulling that is out of our Get repository. Now, this happens to be the primary configuration file that this client is going to be pulling, which is microservices-client, and we are setting this to the dev profile. Now, as you see, I'll point out two things that we're going to look at. First of all, again, we have this name, but it's version 2.1, and the config client, which is our configuration properties, has clients, which is 4. We've set that to a value of 4. Now, going to a REST client here, all right, let's go back and let's just refresh it again, just to make sure we got the latest. Now, as you notice, we have version 2.1, and down here we have clients, which equals 4. Now, let's actually now make a change and see how this is reflected. Now, one thing I will state, though, that's very important, that's not in this section right now in the video, is the cloud config server is already running. So that is an important piece. Okay, now back in the microservices-client-dev.yml property, let's just make a slight modification. Let's actually change this to 2.1, dot 2, just to change something on the name property. That's one. And on the clients, let's change this to 10. Now we're going to save this. And one thing I want to note is that because we're running the server on the same machine as this Get repository, I did not have to restart the server for the server to see this changes go into effect, and I did not have to commit it to the repository either. All I did is have to save it. Now, we do want to properly commit it later, but right now, just saving it, as long as we're pulling from the head of the repository, these changes will already take effect in the server. Now, before we try to verify the properties, I want to point out one important piece. Because we're not addressing security at this point for this lecture, I wanted to note that in the client app, in the application properties or application YML, we must disable the management security. So by setting the property management.security.enabled equals false, will turn off security for the actuator endpoints. And now we're just doing this for testing. It's not what we would do in production. But if you don't do this, when we try to access the endpoints, which we're about to do, you will see a 401 unauthorized error. And that's going to be an issue for us trying to do this refresh. So now let's go do the refresh. Now we are back in a REST client. It's just easier for us to look at it this way versus command line. Now, to note, the configuration in a client is not automatically refreshed. We must execute a specific actuator endpoint to kick off a refresh from our Cloud Config server. So to do that, we must make a special request. This is a post request, not a GET request. And we are posting to a specific endpoint that the actuator has provided, which is called refresh. So let's just actually execute this. Perfect. It finished. And let's see what the result was. So interesting. We've got a 200 response. It was successful. And notice what the body of this response contains. It contains the properties that had changed since the last refresh. And we have two. We have the config.client.credentials.clients property changed, which is part of our config properties object, and the name property also changed, which is not part of a configuration properties. Now, at this point, let's go back to another REST client. I've opened up two just for clarity, and let's actually now refresh without restarting. Let's just refresh that endpoint to see what data it's returning now. So I've refreshed it, and we go down, and here's a very important piece. We saw that we refreshed two properties. However, here if we see the name property, we still see the old property, 2.1, not 2.1.1. It did not get updated because it does not belong to a configuration properties object. However, down below, we see that part of our configuration properties object, there actually is a client that was 4, and now it has been updated to 10. So again, as we see here, this was the name property that is just a standard value that comes out, and we do not have refresh scope enabled. Thus, that does not get refreshed in the context. Only the configuration properties get automatically refreshed if there is an update and you execute the actuator endpoint. Hey, thanks for watching the video. If you like that, please subscribe to my channel and see all the latest videos that I have coming out. Thanks a lot.
I'm a computer, I love my user.